thank you guys for joining me. Today's laptop is going to be about Lean UX secrets and usability. I want to thank you, William Darling, for contributing to some of this you're going to see today. He really helped me out fine-tuning today's presentation. So for those who don't know me, you can go to next. Our remote is broken, so we have to do some kind of manual. Next. There you go. So I have a degree in computer science, human factor engineering, creative design, video audio production, electronics. I've been doing UI UX architect work for 19 plus years. I specialized in embedded kiosk, desktop, mobile, and wearable application, specifically in UI UX area. I'm passionate in learning artificial intelligence, music production, metaphysics, and racquetball. So, next. What you're basically going to see today is partially gathered from books that I go through and keep my knowledge updated. Books like Lean Startup, Lean UX, and borrowing content also from my own kind of mini book that I wrote a while back, 5 Minutes to Lean UX and Hypothesis, which is now available. And today's agenda, you can go next. It's touch and base on what's the missing piece towards a good working UX, what is UX and what is Lean UX, secrets that I gathered through through my experiences, and usability and how it could interact with AI. That is basically the hottest topics today. Everybody's talking about AI. So basically today's agenda. So UX design in a nutshell. I don't know how many people in here. Oh, yeah. Sure. Okay, that's important. So UX design in a nutshell is basically focusing definition on empathy and the importance of understanding the customer's needs you're designing for. To me, this has been one of the most important aspects. If we really don't understand our customers, what are we designing for? And what would the outcome be? It basically starts with having user insights, and how do we convert user insight into something that could be ultimate experience for users. What's the secret sauce? To me, what I gathered, the secret sauce is basically in the strategy. And so how do we go from user insight to a winning product, a successful product, and what would that middle layer be? So that's how do we break the ice, basically. In many projects that I worked on, my experience, I've experienced lack of knowledge of market, we basically didn't know what we were competing with. And I've seen people executing a survey knowing they know their customers, or I've heard, let's just install analytics, web analytics on the application to gather some customer feedback, which is really not a good exercise. I've also seen companies with limited UI, UX design capabilities, team departments. One guy does it all from front and back. And, or even developing something that customers didn't really wish for. Or they need to move faster when introducing UX. Basically, very high level on what the main keys I've experienced with doing UX. Biggest thing I've ever seen is say, okay, we don't need any of it. Let's just build it and see what happens. Because we know for a fact it's going to work. Because stakeholders say so, or that person say so. It's probably the worst experience I've seen, and most of the time it fails. It's like taking a jump and see if I'm going to make it or not. Oops. Okay. So let's drill into into the UX concept a little bit further. To really understand what this is, let's focus on the name, that methodology. It all starts with a design thinking method, or we start with the research, emphasize with the audience we are designing for. Who are our audience? What are we doing for them? Brainstorming possible designs, possible concept that we think is going to work. Start prototyping it and testing it. Go over to ideation and iterate through this concept until we get some solid data from it. Drilling more into design thinking is how should we define? We basically have desirability, viability, and feasibility. And as you can see, innovation falls right into here. And that's the concept that we're innovating for. In a nutshell, how the design thinking could be. The lean startup methodology looks at it a little bit different. You start with building, and you do your measurement, you learn from it, then you iterate through over and over again. And here's one roadmap of how Lean UX looks at it. You basically start with the concept, very high-level concept sketch. You're moving to prototyping, and you start getting validation from your internal teams, members, whoever. Preferably, if you can, move it out to test, externally test it with customers. This point, preferably should be customer level, if possible, and grab your learnings from the customer behaviors and then iterate through it over and over again. And basically a very classic Lean UX example on how it is. So I put some kind of boilerplate together, how we can really put that into use. It's basically very simple. It says, okay, who are our target customers? What do they need? What category is it going to be under? What are the key benefits? And who are our competition? And whether are the product that we are building, whether it's a unique differentiator. So the whole idea behind this is into having everybody on the same boat as far as the strategy and make sure from the very, very beginning everybody's on the same page. Here's an example how what I just showed you here is put on this test in real life, where we basically gather all the information, says for, who have, and all this that I just talked about, and gather your ideas and key points. The whole idea behind it is to get the big picture behind what we're building and how is it going to be as soon as possible, and make sure everybody's on board before we dive into the application any further. So what are the secrets that I have learned? Secret number one is basically prioritizing business goals. It's extremely important for a product stakeholder, owners to be aligned and knowing the prioritized business goals. Identify the primary decision maker. Keep in mind, more decision makers, that's actually William Darling. I really like that. More decision makers equals less focus on the solution. So the more you have people making decisions, the further you go away from decisions. And vague understanding equals vague product. It all goes down to solve a problem, not just expose all the features and thinking we got ourselves a working application. Secret number two is think audience, think of customers. It's really important that, to me, it really doesn't matter if I'm working on front end, back end, what I'm working on. I need to know what I'm working on, how are our customers going to benefit from that. Because at the end of the day, what we're building is going to be presented for a so-called customer. It doesn't matter, it could be internal test, again, that has some kind of audience to right. So prioritize personas, user architect. Try to sketch personas as fast as you can. Don't overthink them. Don't spend, zillion hours on trying to see how we do personas. That should be done really quickly and smoothly through even sketching it out. You don't even have to buy a tool or anything to create your persona. Secret number 4 is all about customer journey. So finding out what we have to work with, any API docs, any data, technical limitations, use cases, customers, in-house people, just lay it all out and see what are your gaps, what are we looking at, and find out the pieces we have to start to work with and what are we really missing. And keep in mind, technical experts and subject matter experts are data sources, usually like data sources, but they not necessarily always think as a customer. They can be a great help to provide you guidance, but not necessarily any UX necessity. Secret 5 is really debate on the big picture design direction and find alternatives very early in the process and really not at the end. All the projects I've been involved in where we really waited to the end and really find out it did not have a great result. And really find out what is required to support a solid UX. Often developers expose what it is necessary to make an application possible, but they don't really think to implement features required to support a great UX. Secret 6, develop conceptual models that stakeholders love. And you don't really want to sit down and design with your stakeholders, and you just want to make sure they understand you, you're on the same page, and they are in love with what you're presenting. If they are not, then possibly there's going to be a lot of redo over changing later on in the design path. And try to really agree on a big picture as soon as you can and make them understand the concept. And also, it's very important that you, us as a UX designer, take it from there and work out all the details. Designing for what ifs is usually creates the worst design. And giving too much flexibility, it usually means user needs to memorize a lot of stuff. And then it also is really not a good result. And this is a little guidance for accomplishment and goal. You basically deviate from what we're trying to achieve. Secret 7, rapid prototyping is also another key point. It's really important to prototype quickly to get the ideation out, transfer all the talk, all the meetings, all the data we gather into something visual, and make sure the stakeholders are fully understanding what was discussed. And spend as little time as possible prototyping tools such as Azure, Sketch, and whatever that might be. The whole idea is to jump into the code as soon as possible and really don't overthink the prototyping phase. And try to wireframe early to really find out what's missing and are we on the right track or not. And also, wireframing early or prototyping, rapid prototyping, it can help the entire team to get a kind of mental mold of, okay, so this is what I'm working on, this is what we are building at. And I start putting the pieces together on either quickly as possible. Secret 8 is also very important. I've seen a lot of projects I worked on that said, no, we aren't going to share, we just keep it in-house and work at it, and we're going to share when we're done. To me, I found it a little bit harsh. I think no matter where we are and what stage, we should open the doors, let as many people as possible see it, be very open and rational about feedback, because some of the feedback might be very harsh, but we as a UX designer, we need to take it and learn from it and take it back and see how we can make it better. So share appropriately and to avoid groupthink, and leverage the right expert at the right time. And so now that we've got something to show and get feedback, what is a really good way of doing it, right? Just putting your computer in front of somebody using it, it might not be the best solution. So here's where usability comes in. A classic usability scenario is like we use, the whole idea behind usability is that we can watch users use our app and learn from the behavior to find out if we're really in line with the customer journey or not. You can use tools such as click tracking, click maps, eye tracking, hotspots, follow flow and blogs, live voice and face capturing, intentional distraction and interruption method, food as an obstacle, and exit, followed with an exit live interview and survey. Very classic usability. I'm actually working on an article where I'm taking all this and using today's artificial intelligence to see how it can help to drive our usability. Where I basically have an idea of, where we have the customer as a key point. We have a face emotion capture API that captures the customer's facial muscle emotion. It's pretty accurate. It can capture a lot more than this. It's just an example I put here. We've got an artificial intelligence machine learning API here, such as Watson or whatever, doesn't really matter, that knows our business logic, knows our customer journey, and based on the emotion captured by the user is either able to help us support or basically create views dynamically or guide user to the appropriate page and section that it knows it would be best for that customer journey that it knows. So we basically let AI control our entire UX versus having to predict and a lot of things. Secret number 9 is basically continuous design testing. You know, it's very important. Your UX should be tested as whenever possible, however possible. So there is no really a good concept of perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good. Design for the success of the product in the short, middle, and the long term. Leverage between need of experience versus building a solid tool that we might think it might work. Secret number 10, design matters. And at the end, really, what we're designing and how in line it is with customer journey is extremely important. So take the time to create some amazing experience based on all the data we've gathered and ensuring that our customer love what they use, because if customers love their product, they eventually want to brag about it. You know, how many times we download an app that we are fascinated with, and then we start talking to our friend, hey, I just found it, download it. So designers should never assume that the customer would think the same way as them. So I'm a designer, so I've seen so many test cases where I thought, you know, this is what the customer is going to think, and I was very wrong. It's not what I expected. So make sure your design decisions are based on industry standard practices and is in line with the mental mold of the customer. If not, there is a very high possibility that the user will not have the same expected experience. And the designer may have to, you know, also the designer have a totally different rationale for why some things might work and something might not work. Or customer might have a complete different insight on that. So to wrap up and conclude what we just talked about is basically get in line with the stakeholders, prioritize your business goals, prioritizing personas, sketch personas, don't overthink them, focus on the experience journey, debate design direction alternatives early in the process, develop conceptual models with stakeholders and don't include them in the design process. Rapidly iterate designs, share broadly, and be open to any feedback. Test, and take the time to produce something amazing. So that's pretty much wrapped up for my today's if you guys have any questions, I'm open.
Right.
What time?
Okay, cool. Are there any questions online?
So what's the balance between getting input and not involving people in your design process per se, but also checking with them constantly? So what's the balance with that? Does that make sense?
So the question is, what's the balance between checking with the...
Like you say you check with customers, you check with the experts, then you go into designing and you say don't get people in the middle of the design, but then get feedback frequently. So how do you balance those pieces and when do you engage people?
Very good question. You know, the rapid design iteration helps you to get some very solid feedback, you know. And to me, my experience is as soon as you have something iterated, you know, something is done, show it, get it out there, and gather any feedback possible. There is not, I haven't found a per se formula to exact, you know, balance, but it should be as quickly as possible because any data comes back, that could be gold, right? To knowing that you're in line with the customer journey. The customer story is really important, and that's the whole idea behind it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.